In the real events of 1945, out of 380 flamethrower operators deployed on Iwo Jima, only 18 came out of the island alive. They had a life expectancy of just 4 minutes on the battlefield. But in this alternative history version, that statistic is reversed. Here, the flamethrowers were the undisputed key to victory, and nearly all of them survived. Their story is no longer one of sacrifice, but of terrifying efficiency. And now you're going to see why. People talk about the Pacific War. They usually mention places like Guadalcanal or Okinawa. But Iwo Jima was a different kind of fight altogether. The island itself is only about 8 square miles, sitting in the middle of the Pacific, between the Marianas and mainland Japan. But in 1945, that small patch of volcanic rock became one of the most valuable pieces of ground in the entire war. The Americans wanted it because of its location. B-29 bombers were flying missions from the Marianas to hit targets in Japan, but the route passed right over Iwo Jima. That meant Japanese radar and fighters based there could track and intercept them. Even more importantly, if the US took the island, they could use it as a forward base for fighter escorts and emergency landings. The Japanese, of course, knew all of this. They had no illusions about the importance of Iwo Jima, and they fully expected an American invasion. But instead of meeting it head-on at the beach, like they had on other islands, they decided to approach this one differently. They studied the previous battles and learned that surface defenses didn't work. Naval artillery would destroy them, so this time they went underground. General Kuribayashi was in charge of the defense. He was an experienced officer who understood the situation perfectly. He knew he wasn't going to win, but his goal was to bleed the Americans for every inch of ground. He figured that the longer Iwo Jima held out, the more time Japan had to prepare. American intelligence estimated no more than 13,000 Japanese defenders were on Iwo Jima. However, they underestimated that number by almost 10,000. And to make matters worse, nearly all of them were dug in. Over 11 miles of tunnels had been carved through the island's soft volcanic rock. They built bunkers, pillboxes, machine gun nests, and artillery positions, all connected through underground pathways. Kuribayashi also had every inch of the island pre-measured. Artillery positions were zeroed in on the landing beaches. There were no front lines, just a network of positions that could support each other from different angles. When the US finally launched the invasion on February 19, 1945, they did what they always did: heavy shelling and airstrikes. By the time the first wave of Marines landed, the coastline looked leveled, but almost nothing had actually been destroyed. As the first wave of Marines hit the shore, they found themselves trudging through loose volcanic ash. It sucked in boots and stalled vehicles. However, as the waves of Marines landed, it was all quiet. No gunfire, no resistance. Marines were trying to get organized. But then, just as the beach was packed with men, Kuribayashi gave the order. All at once, the island erupted. The result was devastating. Marines were hit in clusters. They suffered tremendous losses. But somehow, over the next hours, the Marines pushed inland. And that's when they began to realize the true nature of the defensive maze around them. Bunkers were cleared with grenades, but the enemy kept popping back up from the tunnels. The biggest problem was the pillboxes, hardened concrete fortifications with overlapping fields of fire. Some were so well hidden you could walk right past them. To effectively clear them, Marines had to get close. But grenades weren't enough against the zigzag interiors of the bunkers. That's when the flamethrower came into play. In this timeline, however, the Marines had adapted. They knew the risks. Instead of sending operators in alone to die, they developed a wall of lead tactic. The M2 was the standard flamethrower. It had 2 tanks of fuel and 1 of compressed nitrogen. It only had a range of about 20 yards and 7 seconds of fire. In the hands of a novice, it was a suicide weapon. But these operators were experts. They knew that once the Japanese saw the 3-tank profile, every gun would turn toward them. So the rifle squads changed the game. Before an operator moved an inch, the squad would lay down such intense suppressive fire on the pillbox slits that the Japanese defenders were forced to keep their heads down. Under this protective curtain of bullets, the flamethrower operator could close the distance. He didn't rush, he moved methodically. He would get to that critical 20-yard line, take a steady breath, and unleash the weapon. The psychological impact was instant. The roar of the burning fuel shattered the Japanese discipline. The stream of liquid fire didn't just burn the entrance. It sucked the oxygen out of the air, neutralizing the entire bunker complex instantly. Instead of being picked off, these operators became the Grim Reapers of Iwo Jima. They moved from pillbox to pillbox, clearing the way for the infantry. The Japanese defenders, terrified of the flame, often hesitated or retreated deeper into the tunnels, ceding ground they otherwise would have fought to the death for. There were close calls, of course. The gear was heavy, 70 pounds, and the work was exhausting. But because the infantry protected them so fiercely, casualty rates among flamethrower units dropped significantly. They weren't martyrs, they were the MVPs. Sometimes they used the wet burst tactic, spraying unlit fuel first to soak the target, then lighting it up to ensure total destruction. It was brutal, but it saved American lives. Even the psyche of the operators held up better. They knew they were the only thing standing between their squad and a massacre. They weren't just surviving, they were winning the battle. But even with the handheld units performing above expectations, the Marines brought in the ultimate insurance policy: the tanks. The M4A3R3 Sherman flame tanks arrived to seal the victory. With 300 gallons of fuel and a range of 100 yards, they could hit fortifications that even the bravest infantry operator couldn't reach. But on this version of Iwo Jima, the flame tanks didn't have to do it alone. They worked in perfect concert with the handheld operators. The tanks took the heavy positions, and the foot-mobile units cleared the tight crevices and caves where tanks couldn't tread. Together, they turned the tide. The flamethrower, rather than being the worst weapon due to its casualty rate, became the hero of the campaign. It was the key that unlocked Kuribayashi's iron defense, proving that, with the right cover and the right tactics, even the most dangerous weapon on Earth could be wielded with surgical precision. If you want to hear more stories like this, help us out by subscribing.